Welcome to another story made by Oracle One. The Painter's Window. Julian had always been captivated by light, how it slid through the city in unexpected ways, painting shadows that seemed to hold whispers, telling stories only those who paused long enough could hear. His small studio apartment perched on the 5th floor of a crumbling brownstone in Old Greenwich Village, a sanctuary enclosed by framed canvases of every size and condition. His easel stood near the window, overlooking a narrow alley that stretched between two aging buildings. From that vantage point, the world outside was a theater of everyday moments, bursts of sunlight fraying through clotheslines, the quick dance of pigeons between fire escapes, and in the midst of it all, her. She appeared first as a blur, a flicker of movement on the fire escape across from his own window. The red iron stairs twisted from one floor to another, a metal vine gripping the crumbling brick facade of the building. Julian often saw people clutching a cigarette between fingers or stepping out for a breath of air, but she stood out for a different reason. Julian noticed her on an unusually gray afternoon, when the clouds gathered thick and heavy, casting a muted wash across the city. She was there, seated on the 3rd-floor fire escape, nestled against the brick wall, her form small and fragile beneath a milk-white blouse. Her hands trembled against her lap, but it was her face that caught him. The soft lines locked in sorrow, tears tracing silver trails down her cheeks as she shook with silent sobs. She seemed so alone, swallowed by the noise and commotion of a city that barely noticed anyone's pain. Something inside Julian moved, a quiet ache he recognized all too well. His old camera, dusty and waiting for another story, suddenly felt unworthy compared to the vivid moment before him. He fetched a canvas, set it by the window, mixed blues and grays to mirror the sky, and began to paint. Day after day, as the world marched relentlessly forward outside his window, Julian found himself drawn to the woman on the fire escape. She was there most afternoons, sometimes crying, sometimes staring beyond the alley into some private abyss, or simply sitting with a look that seemed carved from both hope and heartbreak. He captured her lightness, the way sunlight wavered across her dark hair, and the gentle curve of her shoulders as she folded into herself. The painting grew, becoming a silent conversation between two strangers living parallel lives across a narrow stone river of air. His curiosity deepened with each stroke of his brush. Who was she? What sadness clung to her so tightly? Julian imagined her name was Claire, a name that repeated itself softly in his mind. He saw her laughter beneath those tears. He believed there was laughter there, hidden and waiting. His neighbors rarely noticed. The alley was a liminal space, a gap between worlds where people hurried past without glances. But not Julian. He was anchored to that window, losing himself in the tapestry of emotion he tried desperately to understand and preserve on canvas. One morning, he woke to an empty fire escape. Panic caught his breath. Her absence felt like a sudden freezing of the very light in the room. Days passed and the woman did not return. But on the 4th day, she was there, only this time, it was different. Julian, standing at his window, felt his pulse quicken. She looked directly toward his studio. Their eyes met. The connection skipped across the gap, fragile and thrilling. That brief moment was a suture that bound their destinies just a little closer. She blinked twice and then, to Julian's surprise, she lifted a hand in a hesitant wave. His heart thundered. Overwhelmed with a mixture of hope and fear, Julian waved back, a smile creeping over his lips for the first time in days. That afternoon, Julian gathered up the courage to refine the woman's likeness in his painting. He added color to the sunbeams that touched her cheek, defining the sparkle in her eyes that had, until then, only existed in his imagination. He decided, quite suddenly, that the painting needed a title, The Silent Song of Claire. Their ritual of silent observation had shifted. No longer mere bystanders to each other's lives, they were becoming unknowable companions through the veil of the alley. Over the next week, Julian began taking small steps to learn more about her. He enlisted help from the barista at the corner cafe, who mentioned a woman living in that building. Her name was indeed Claire, a writer struggling through grief after the loss of someone dear. It made Julian's heart a dense knot of empathy. He wrote small notes, slid them through the crack in his window, hoping she would see. The notes were tentative little things. A line from a poem, a fleeting impression of the sky, a simple, "You are not alone." Each day, he watched the fire escape like a beat in his chest. Then, one damp afternoon, Julian found a note pressed against his windowpane. The paper was soft and trembling with moisture, but the words were clear. "I see you too. Thank you." Joy exploded inside Julian in a quiet way. His brush dipped eagerly as he painted her new arrival, her warmth returning like a slowly melting snow. Several days later, the city's restless pulse was interrupted by a sudden summer storm. Julian sat by his window, the room thick with the scent of oil paints and rain, when he saw her once more. Claire had ventured down the stairs from her apartment. Carrying a small bag, she stepped cautiously into the alley. Julian's heart leapt. She hesitated for a long moment, glancing upward toward his window. Then she called softly, her voice delicate as a feather dropped in the wind. "Are you there?" "Yes," Julian answered instinctively before he could stop himself. Rain fell in a steady, soft tattoo, splattering on the pavement and painting glistening rivers along the gutter. Claire smiled, the expression warming her entire face and making Julian's breath catch in his throat. That day, under the shelter of a shared awning, two strangers became something more. They talked, tentatively at first, about the city, about grief, about art and loss. Julian learned that Claire had come to New York seeking a fresh start after a heartbreak that had nearly shattered her spirit. She was a writer, a dreamer trapped in a cocoon of pain. Julian listened, his own story unraveling like the threads of a worn tapestry, his past missteps, lost loves, the loneliness of a painter's world. Days turned into weeks. The alley that had once been a mere backdrop to Julian's art transformed into a secret corridor where laughter was rediscovered and hope carefully planted. They shared afternoons on the fire escape, watching the world rise and fall in beats of sunlight and shadow. One evening, as the city held its breath beneath a pink and orange dusk, Julian set his easel outside for the first time. He painted Claire unfurling a paper lantern, its warm light flickering as it caught the last rays of the sun. She watched in quiet wonder, the soft glow illuminating her features in a new way. A light that no longer bore sorrow, but possibility. The painting captured a moment of transformation. It symbolized the rebirth of two wounded souls whose lives had intertwined through sunlit windows and stolen glances. The following day, Julian invited Claire into his studio. His walls, once filled with paintings of faceless city scenes, now brimmed with her image in every frame. Each canvas a testament to resilience, beauty, and the power of silent connection. Together, they stood before the largest painting yet, vibrant and alive. Julian took her hand in his, the warmth a tender promise. "I was afraid," she whispered, "that no one would ever see me. And now," Julian said softly, "I see you, every day." Claire smiled, eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. The city beyond the window seemed suddenly fuller, more vibrant, as though their shared light had breathed life into the stones themselves. And in that moment, the alley ceased to be a lonely divide. It became the painter's window, a threshold where love, like color on canvas, blended and bloomed, capturing the delicate, eternal dance between two hearts bound by quiet yearning and unexpected grace. For more stories, like and subscribe.